Does your torsion axle, livestock, or horse trailer need a lift kit? That's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about new trucks, old trailers, proper ride height, if you can do a lift kit on your trailer to make it work better on your truck, things to look for, how to properly measure it, and how to fit that maybe older trailer that you have with your newer vehicle that you've recently purchased. We've got a WW hooked up here. This is a new trailer, but we're going to simulate it like it is an old trailer, so use your imagination. We're going to show you how it could possibly look. We're going to pull this into the shop. We're going to talk some ride height scenarios, and then we're going to show you some options as far as possibly being able to correct your ride height with a lift kit and a couple other scenarios. So hop in with us. We're going to pull in the shop and we'll get this covered. If you've purchased a truck in the last 10 years, you've likely noticed that the bed height on new trucks is taller, whether that's half ton all the way up to 1 ton, especially if a four-wheel drive. That are making the bed height today much taller than it used to be. And where that becomes a problem, maybe you have an older trailer that's been around in your family for a while. Maybe you've had one that's 15, 20 years old. When you go to hook it up to your new truck, you can't get enough tailgate clearance, or if you get enough tailgate clearance, the ride height is too high. This is a new truck with a new trailer. This is easy to get the correct ride height. We're going to explain that, but I want to mock it up just to show you things to look for, maybe the cheapest way and the best way that you can try to correct the ride height. And if that doesn't work, maybe some more invasive steps that you may have to take on your trailer to get the correct ride height. And then we're going to talk about sometimes it's not even feasible to do it. With the way we've got the trailer set up right now, we have the front of the trailer sitting at about 23 inches ground clearance. The back of the trailer is about 13 and a half, 14 inches. So that's very steep. If you're transporting livestock in that's going to be hard on their bodies running at that steep of an angle. The reason that most people run a trailer that high, and if you look around, maybe you don't have a stock trailer, but just look up and down the road, you'll see stock trailers being pulled very high in the front. The reason they're going to do that is to get enough tailgate clearance. This trailer here, being a new trailer, we have all the tailgate clearance in the world. This is way more than we need. There's no perfect number on tailgate clearance. It depends, really if you go across steep railroad crossings, maybe terraces, if you're working out in the pasture loading your animals. You want around 6-7 inches minimum clearance in between the bottom of the neck and the top of the tailgate. Reason being, if you go over a steep incline or a terrace, so that you don't contact the bottom of the neck to the top of the tailgate. So you have to find a way. If you have minimal clearance here, you've got to be able to raise this clearance, but you also have to be in such a manner that the ride height is correct on the trailer, that you're not too steep in the front and low in the back. So that's what we're going to cover. The first thing to look for, the easiest and cheapest scenario, and that would be inside the bed. I'm going to drop the tailgate. So on this trailer, we know we have a lot of clearance in between the bottom of the neck and the top of the tailgate. Simply, all you need to do on this is lower the neck down on the stem of the gooseneck. So basically, you're going to raise the neck raise the stem of the trailer up into its receiver to shorten the height, to bring the neck closer to the bed of the truck. It's very easy, doesn't cost you anything to do that. This will work on many newer trailers. The problem is it won't help you on a lot of the older trailers, and we're going to get into why that won't work. A lot of times if you bring this neck, I'll point it out with my tape measure, on the older trailers, a lot of times even if you bring this collar all the way to the bottom of this collar, it's too steep on the front. And then we have a problem with it being, your animal's not riding correctly, but this being a torsion axle trailer, and that's specifically what we're talking about, you're not loading the weight correctly on that. You're going to be putting more weight on that rear axle. Remember, with a torsion axle trailer, you need to be almost level when loaded to get the proper ride height, to get the proper weight scenario on there. So that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for multiple things, looking for tailgate clearance, but also you're going to look at the front axle. And just to clarify, we're specifically talking about a torsion axle setup, torsion axle suspension today. We're not really going to cover spring axle. We may talk a little bit about it towards the end of the video, but in this scenario, if you look at the front of this axle, we're running about 17 3/4. The measurement behind the axle is just around 14 3/4, 15 inches. So we're way high in the front, and what that does, that is transferring more of the load to the rear axle instead of the front. And if you watched our video on torsion axle ride height, we'll talk about that, how important it is, especially on torsion setup. You need to be almost level whenever you are loaded. If you're unloaded, you can have a little bit of preload height on the front end, that when it settles down, you're level to run down the road, so that these axles work how they're designed, work properly, and that you don't damage an axle. So this is a basic scenario that we see honestly almost every day. We have an older trailer that sets so low in the front to bring it up to get enough tailgate clearance so that you don't contact your tailgate. We drop the coupler, which raises the nose of the trailer, which brings this front axle sometimes all the way off the ground. So what that can cause is this axle's not doing any work, and also if you're running brakes on the front axle, it can cause flat spotting on the tire because there's not enough weight on that and it's just skipping going on the road, whether that's on pavement or gravel. So you've got to get the nose down, and there's where it can become complicated. You either have to do that at the front, you're either going to have to do it at the axles, and you may have to do both. So we're going to swing back up to the front to show why this is, what you can do there, along with what we've already showed you, then here at the back as well. So really where the problem begins on older trailers that's different from newer trailers is the riser height. And that is basically from the bottom of the neck to the bottom of the pan. This trailer here is about 47-inch riser height. So not talking about this gusset, this is technically a riser. So from the bottom of that neck to the bottom of the pan is about 47 inches. That's pretty standard on utility trailers that have goosenecks and cattle trailers today and cargos. In the old days, 10, 15 years ago, you had 36 to 40-inch riser height. That works great on an old vehicle, or if you have a flatbed, you usually don't have any problem because you're not contacting the sides of the beds or the tailgate. So most of the newer trailers, they have raised that riser height to accommodate for new trucks. But if you're pulling an old trailer with a new truck, sometimes it's just not feasible. Sometimes it's not going to work. You may only have 2 to 3 inches of clearance, and that's great until you run over a terrace or something like that, and it's going to be a problem. So there's where you have to raise your height here. Well, if you're already at level or above and you raise this height, that's only going to make your problem at the rear worse. It's going to lower your loading height on the back, which is okay for animals, but it's not going to be okay on your axles. You're going to push all that weight to the rear of the trailer. So really you only have a couple of choices. If you can't get the correct height out of the coupler like we talked about in the first of the video, you have to do one of two things or two of two things. You can put a lift kit on the axles, and we're going to show that lift kit. We're going to talk about what it's about, and then we're going to show that simulated if we were to lift it, and if that won't work, the other option you have to do, and that's where it can get costly. And it may even come to the option where you just sell that trailer as is and maybe have to purchase something newer model that will accommodate your truck. So I'm going to grab the lift kit. We're going to rip a tire off this. We'll show you how that lift kit goes on, where it goes, and what it does. So if you decide that a lift kit may be a good option for you, check with whatever axle manufacturer you have to make sure that the correct lift kit is available. It's going to be dependent upon manufacturer, axle size, year of the trailer. Now, where this won't work if your torsion axles are welded directly to the frame. If they're welded directly to the frame, the lift kit is not going to work. This is for a bolt-on application. It's going to come with the lift block, and what you will do is you will remove this axle completely. This lift block will go in between where the existing axle sets, the frame of the trailer, and then the torsion axle will bolt back to the block itself. This is going to raise it about 2.5 inches, so it's going to raise the whole height of the trailer 2.5 inches. It's going to come with a lift block, necessary hardware to put everything together, whether that's tandem axle, single axle. You need to make sure you get enough to cover both axles, but again, double check with your manufacturer the size of an axle. So if your axle is welded on, again, this is not going to work. So your other option is this: you can block it by having it welded. You can have the axle removed, and then whether you're capable of doing that, taking it to a weld shop or to a trailer repair, they can put a block. I see people put blocks 4 and 6 inches high. I don't go any higher than what this is. Usually if you have to go higher than this, it's going to create some other problems. I'm not a big fan of that. So yes, it can be done if your axle is welded on. It also depends how much weld that they have put on the original bracket of the torsion. Sometimes we see these welded solid all the way around. Those are difficult to get off without compromising the integrity of the bracket on the torsion. And if this is broke off, you cannot weld that back onto the torsion tube because it will compromise the internals that what makes the torsion work correctly. So if it's not a bolt-on, then you may have some trouble getting it lifted going the fabrication and weld route. So just keep that in mind, and that may be the determining factor on whether or not you're going to be able to retrofit your existing trailer or if you're going to have to upgrade to a later model trailer. So We're going to take a measurement off the back right now, and then we will simulate it if we've added the 2.5 inches to that to show you what it's going to do. So we're about 14.5 inches to the actual load height. Now I'm going to go jack up the trailer and simulate as if we have installed the blocks. It'll show you what that new lift height is. Then we're going to talk about the loading height after you've made the lift. So the lift block on this torsion setup is actually 3 inches. So we have raised the trailer up at the axle 3 inches to simulate the lift. We have not brought the tongue down or up, and that puts you at about 18 1/4 height on your rear bumper. If you do that and you still need to bring the tongue down in order to make it to where it's not still steep on the front end, if you bring the tongue down, that is going to raise the height of this. And there comes the problem. You can get this so high off the ground, your animals are not going to load. So I recommend all the people that I deal with to take a measurement of this, set it up on your trailer, measure it with, do it with jacks and jack stands to mock it up before you purchase the lift to see if it's even feasible. So your options are this: once you raise this and you lower the front, if you're perfect but too tall here, you may put a ramp. That would be an option on the trailer, but that's going to be costly to put a ramp, and your animals have to load with a ramp. That may not work if you're loading cattle with pins or a chute. Ramp's going to get in the way, so that's not going to be feasible. We're going to go to the front and talk about the other option you could do. It will correct almost any trailer. It's just very costly. It takes a lot to do it, but it is the right way to do it if nothing else is going to work. You either have to do that, or you're gonna have to trade your trailer in, sell it, get you something later model that's gonna work better with your truck. So after taking your measurements and you've come to the conclusion that the lift is gonna help, but it's not gonna completely get you where you need to go, that's where you have to make a decision. You're either going to do some major surgery on your existing unit, and it may be feasible to do that. You may have a nice older aluminum stock trailer or an aluminum living quarter that's got either a tack or an LQ in it, and you really don't want to get rid of it. There's some things you're going to have to do to that, but like again, it's a major surgery, especially on a aluminum or an enclosed front end like a LQ or a tack. On an open front canvas top or even a steel top, it's not that big of a deal. It still can be done, but again, it's going to take some knowledge, somebody that knows how to fab weld, and this is what you would have to do. You would literally have to remove the tongue of the trailer from the trailer. So you're going to take the whole tongue, the riser and or gusset setup the way you've got, and you're going to have to raise the height. So if this were an older trailer, to get where you need basically the height of this beam, you're going to have to raise this above it and then re-gusset down, redo all of your bridging, all of your bracing to do that. And it may be feasible. We have an old WW deck over trailer that we used to pull around with a 1-ton. It's too low for this truck, so we're actually cutting off the neck on that. I may show some videos if we ever get back to doing it. We've got it started, we have it mocked up, but we're having to raise the neck about 10 inches on it in order to get it on this, but we don't want to get rid of the trailer. We've had it for a while. It works good for going and getting material, so we're going to modify that trailer. You either can do a lift, whether that be a bolt-on or fab. I don't recommend going over 3 inches. Some shops may do 4 for you. That may work. That may get you completely corrected. You may have to install a ramp. That may not be enough, and you may have to raise the height of the trailer. You may look at all that and say, man, that's way too much. You may be more cost effective to sell that as is. Somebody pulled it on an older vehicle and you just trade it in for a newer trailer. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up, click to subscribe, and be sure to check out the description below. We'll try to leave some links. I don't know if this is available online. I'll see if we can find it, put it on there in case you need a lift kit for your axle. But just remember to get one specific for your axle manufacturer and the sizing of the axle manufacturer. I know it's a little loud today. We've had a ton of rain. It's a work day. I'm not going to apologize for any of that because we got to work and we need the rain seriously around here. Also, leave us comments, leave us video ideas, and just remember, if you're running a gooseneck trailer, whether it be stock or whether that be a utility trailer, and you need to raise it up to get more clearance, you can use a lift kit, whether that be a bolt-on, maybe you have it fabbed at a local shop, maybe you have the capability to do that, but that may not be everything you need. You may have to cut the neck off, raise the neck in order to drop the pan of the trailer down. You may have to take several steps, and it may not be cost effective to do that. You may just need to sell that and trade in, or sell it, trade in, or upgrade to a later model. Unfortunately, it is what it is. The trucks, whether it's even a half ton is taller than what the 3/4 tons used to be. And if you have any type of lift kit on top of that with a 4-wheel drive, it's getting harder and harder to haul stock trailers. So hopefully this gives you some information, at least where to get started, what to look for. If you call a shop, just make sure they're qualified to do that on the torsion axle setup. We'll do one on a spring suspension. It's a little more complicated, a little more to it, so that's why I'm not going to cover that in this video, but we'll do a video on that. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one.